Good morning. I want to start this video off with a mea culpa. I stated that Michael Lucas was a sovereign citizen, and I don't script my videos. I just say them. And in my head, I was going to say that Michael Lucas was using a sovereign citizen tactic akin to the sovereign citizen tactics that James Freeman uses, but that's not what I said. So I was wrong, and I apologize to Michael Lucas for calling him a sovereign citizen. He is not, to the best of my knowledge, a sovereign citizen. He was merely using a sovereign citizen, a tactic common to sovereign citizens. Now for something slightly lighter to lighten the mood. I was thinking about cops lying today, because we all know that cops lie. Everybody knows cops lie. It is a fundamental fact that human beings lie. We lie to each other all the time. It is very common. Do you know what mom got me for birthday? No, I don't. Well, yeah, you do. You just don't want to say. Things like that. Not all lies are bad. A lot of lies are just done to maintain social cohesion and, smooth over feelings. Oh, no, honey, you look great in that outfit. Oh, it looks like you've lost weight. You don't look 50. You don't look a day over 29. Lies are common, and lies are not always bad. But cops do lie. Not on the stand so much, and there's a reason why they don't lie on the stand nearly as often. And that is because if a cop perjures himself on the stand, then every case that cop has ever testified in might be reopened. Every single case. Every single person that cop put away can basically say, hey, the cop was lying. He was lying here. He was probably lying on my case too. And so police departments are cognizant of that, and they don't want liars on the force. And by liars, I mean cops who don't know when to not lie. Now, while they're doing their investigations, while they're out in the field, while they're talking to auditors, they'll lie all the time. It's common. So we know the cops are liars, and we know the cops lie all the time. And that got me thinking, man, Earl would have been a great cop. He loves to play dress up as a cop. I mean, it usually ends up poorly for some poor woman, but he loves to play dress up as a cop. He loves guns, and he loves to lie. I mean, what a career opportunity missed for that guy. And that also got me thinking, wow, how terrible must Jack, Texas Sheepdog, be? And how terrible must, oh God, what the hell's his name? Damon Jones, Chief Damon Jones. How terrible must they be that an institution like the police in the South, where police can be overweight, ignorant, dumb fucks, louts, who sleep in their cars all the time, how grossly incompetent must Jack Miller and Damon Jones have been to not be able to be even working in jails anymore? I mean, that is just a terrible critique of them as people. But they also love guns, and they love to play dress up. It always amuses me when Jack rolls around with his little t-shirt on that has a badge on it. I mean, project a little harder there, Jack. We all know that you miss being a cop. Anyway, so this is going to be my final foray into bad arguments. I'm not gonna talk about Smash Anarchies, because he's just way off the rails. He's bringing something up about he completely tried to change his Nazi argument, and he's still using moral and immoral and amoral in it. So that's pretty dumb. Stupid people will always make bad arguments just because they're stupid. Michael Lucas, though, is not stupid, and he's not a sovereign citizen, in case I haven't mentioned that. But he is still making bad arguments. Bad argument number one that he has made, that I've seen this morning, is that community service is not fungible with money, because $300 to a rich person might be nothing And $300 to a poor person might be a lot, and a poor person might prefer the community service over paying the fine. Well, again, that's just poorly understood math by you. A poor person, let's say a person making, I don't know what minimum wage is right now, let's say it's $10 an hour. $300 translates into probably about 60 hours worth of work, maybe 50 hours worth of work after taxes and everything, that $300 fine represents. You're going to say, well, $10 an hour times 30 hours is 300, and no, because there's taxes that come out of it. I don't know the exact amount that comes out of a $10 an hour check, but it's somewhere between, let's say, 45 hours, roughly. Whereas to an attorney, I mean, some attorneys, that might be like a half hour's worth of work. So, well, gosh, but the thing is that the poor person might prefer the community service, because if you do the math in your head, the poor person would lose maybe 8 hours if he does a day of community service. It would end up costing him roughly $80 net or gross, whatever that net would be, I don't know. Whereas a rich person might look at it and say, well, I'd rather do it's not going to cost me nearly as much to pay. It's going to cost me, for me, it would cost me quite a bit more to do the 8 hours of community service. But then you could stretch that even further. I mean, essentially to like someone who's unemployed, 8 hours of community service is zero punishment, because they don't have anything to do anyway. It's a nice excuse to get out of the house and do some good for the community or something. I don't know. So it still comes down to economics. It's still an economic equation. What do you prefer? Do you prefer to spend the money, or do you prefer to spend the time? And it's like me mowing the lawn. I could pay someone to mow the lawn, or I can mow the lawn myself. My time is more valuable than what I could pay someone to mow the lawn with, but it's still money and time. The other argument that he has made is that a lot of cops have come forward and said that there is policing for profit, and I should just Google it. There's a couple things that I want to say about that. First, going back to the beginning of this little video, cops lie. We know cops lie. We all agree cops lie. Even Michael Lucas agrees cops lie. And yet when it's convenient to his narrative, Michael Lucas is more than happy to trot a cop out and say, hey, look, this cop is going to be telling you the truth because this cop is telling you what I want to hear. It doesn't matter to Michael Lucas that any cop who's saying something like that is probably a disaffected cop, along the lines of a Jack Miller or a Damon Jones, who is no longer able to be a cop because of something. Maybe he was fired, and is now looking to, get back at the system that he feels slighted him. Whoops, right? But in general, saying Google it is a bad argument. It is a terrible argument, and people do it for a variety of reasons, but here are some of the huge holes in it. First of all, Google isn't an arbiter of truth. I mean, people can say anything on Google. You could watch videos on YouTube about the Illuminati and about, 5G causing coronavirus or some dumb shit. I mean, you could find anything out there. If you Google it, you can get to sovereign citizen websites. They will tell you all sorts of stupid shit. Google it is not going to get anybody to the truth. It's a very poor argument to make. The second thing is that what sources did you use to arrive at your decision that the cops are in fact policing for profit? Because I could find 3 or 4 sources that say, oh yeah, police are ticketing for profit, and then I could rebut them and show their various policies at their various police headquarters and things like that. I could show the amount of money each department spends versus how much revenue each department generates for the city or the state. And then you can say, oh, no, I wasn't talking about those. I was talking about this other one. I was talking about some other one. Google it again. Look harder. And third, and finally, Google it doesn't address any of the counter arguments out there. There are a lot of counter arguments that have been made about this whole policing for profit thing. And again, as I have stated before, I have done research on the Tennessee State Troopers and on the San Francisco County Sheriff, both of which spend way more money, both of which run deficits compared to the amount of income they generate for the county or for the state, respectively. The sheriff generates money for the county and for the state, but the Tennessee State Troopers, they only generate money for the state. So, or at least that's my understanding of it. I could be wrong. But anyway, both departments run huge deficits. Now, there is a common thing that people bring up that, police are told that they have to issue X number of citations or whatever. And I have never found that to be the case. I have seen where officers in traffic divisions are required to do X number of contacts per hour, because the departments know that there are people speeding and that there are people violating traffic laws, and they are paying these traffic officers to do a job, to be patrolling. Just by being present, it deters other speeders. Just by being present, maybe they'll catch the worst offenders, and they'll basically tone it back a little bit. But there has never been a dollar amount associated with what they're required to do. I've never seen that. And I've also never seen them get in trouble. I've never seen any department policy stating that they have to issue X number of tickets. It's always X number of interactions, and those interactions can be warnings. They may issue a warning. They may just, they may just give you a verbal. But I've never seen any dollar amount associated with them. So, and even then, how would the officer know how much a ticket that he wrote is going to generate? Because first of all, the officer may or may not show up to the court hearing. The person may or may not pay the fine outright. They may contest it. If they do contest it, the officer may or may not show up. And even if the officer does show up, the judge may or may not believe the officer. And so at the end of the day, no police officer can be assured of how much profit they are generating. They probably don't even know how much they're costing. So, I mean, if you want to talk about profits, revenue generation is different than profit, So, I mean, there's just a lot of issues with it. But none of this goes back and actually addresses whether or not it is moral or immoral to issue citations for traffic infractions. None of it addresses that. Again, Mr. Lucas has completely failed to take on the task, because he's not addressed whether or not it is moral or immoral to make the laws in the first place, whether or not it is moral or immoral to associate fines with it. He's made a weak argument that community service could be a substitute for fines. But again, some people would prefer it, some people wouldn't, but it still boils down to an economic equation. And speaking of which, it would also cost the state more money, because they have to pay people to be out there with the people who are on the work details or whatever. They have to pay people to administrate that and to supervise it and to make sure the people are in the right places and drive the people to whatever side of the freeway they're going to collect on. Anyway, my point is that he hasn't addressed whether or not it's moral to make the law, to create a penalty for violating the law, whether it's immoral to enforce the law, and why enforcing the law would become policing for profit and therefore immoral. He hasn't addressed that, or at least he hasn't adequately addressed that, and telling me to Google it doesn't matter one bit. And I may be naive. I may be naive by actually questioning whether or not all police are bad, but I do think that some police are bad. And I do believe that some police are good. And I do believe that there can be police who are good at some times and bad at other times. And maybe that's naive. But what I have not seen is solid evidence that it is immoral for police to issue citations, to issue tickets, to enforce enforce traffic laws. So thanks for watching. This is the end of the bad arguments. Whatever rebuttals you want to make at this point, Mr. Lucas, you're more than welcome to do. I'm not going to be addressing them because this has lost its charm. Have a great day.